You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
All right, so I was really shocked at this, but
Me too.
The winner.
I knew I wasn't gonna do well.
Well, I didn't feel that way, but the winner is me, 10-4. You know, we didn't have as many votes, but I was really shocked that as many people found my article as interesting. I really thought I was being self-indulgent and just picking something that interested me. I wasn't, but wow, I was kind of shocked. Yeah. So
good job. You're on a roll.
Wow, 2 in a row.
Yeah.
So I'm up 3-2 right now. But this week, I have no idea what your article is. So I know you know what mine is, but so I'm gonna choose to go first.
Okay.
And I'll let you go afterwards. So my article was put out by Channel 4 New York NBC News. And it's called Nesting Pairs of Bald Eagles Found in Every New Jersey County for the First Time in 40 Years. So speaking of eagles, because we just mentioned that earlier, I found that really interesting. And they've been monitoring since the 70s and 80s. And going back into that time in New Jersey, there was only one nesting pair of bald eagles. And a lot of that is attributed to the introduction of DDT, which decrease the eggshell and a lot of
thickness of the eggshell,
thickness,
right?
and the babies couldn't or embryos couldn't survive incubation because of how thin the eggshell was. So with that being corrected, all 21 counties in New Jersey have nesting pairs of eagles, Essex County being the last one. 220 nesting pairs in New Jersey, which is impressive, which bared 307 young eagles this year. So that's phenomenal. And there was another 28 additional pairs that didn't nest. So very, very interesting. Maybe one of those pairs is ones that attacked the eagle cam. But a record 36 new nests found in 2020, with 27 in South Jersey and 7 in Central Jersey. They're saying over half the nests are in the Delaware Estuary Bay, like Delaware Bay being in Salem, Cumberland, and Cape May County, which kind of makes sense because it's really underdeveloped there, and it's probably the right habitat for them. And that's pretty much it. It's. I just thought that was a great comeback success story. I know in our Facebook group, Richard McCoy posted saying how eagles are they're seeing not a decline, but deaths due to lead from shot or hunting, basically, like where they eat the carcass and have a shot with lead. So
and that's something from the hunting side of things for a lot of at least the waterfowl species, you're required to use steel shot so you don't get the lead poisoning. And there's more and more hunters that are just doing it on their own, where for upland birds or for rabbits and squirrels and those kind of things, where they're just choosing to use steel or tungsten or different kinds of metals that aren't going to be toxic, because you hate to see it, but every once in a while you don't find something that you shot, and sometimes the animal doesn't die right away even though you hit it, but it might die a few days or even a month later due to injuries, or even sometimes it just gets into cattails or something really thick, and you can't, even though you search and search and search, you just never find it. But other things do, and with lead shot, it can be toxic to them. So
so that's my article. I'm curious to see what you have.
But with all the Eagles in the state, it still couldn't help your Philadelphia Eagles in any way.
I don't even want to have that conversation.
But it's pretty cool. I remember just being a kid, when we saw our first eagle here. I was probably a teenager when we saw our first one flying over, and now there's on our video, Fran's putting up little things saying vote for Fran.
I was hoping you didn't notice that.
But And yeah, so I was a teenager when we had our first one fly over. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And now I see them on a weekly basis because we have some that are there's a nesting pair that's
right
less
down
than
the
a
road
mile
from us.
away,
Yeah.
and we have them on one of our seed farms all the time. They like hanging out in the trees over there and looking for stuff. So.
And there was actually one of our former drivers spotted, and we went over. It was a few years ago. It was a golden eagle and a bald eagle posturing over a carcass.
Yeah,
they were positioning, and I think the bald eagle ended up winning out. But that's the first time I've ever seen a golden eagle in this area. The only time I'd ever seen a golden eagle before was in Montana.
Yeah, and I didn't get to see that.
Yeah, but that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, but it's really is a comeback story. It's pretty amazing. I would assume it's happening in a lot of other places in the country as well.
I would hope, but it's with how bad some of the areas of New Jersey can be.
Yeah,
the fact that's a pretty huge success.
Yeah, you look at Essex County, that's pretty close to New York City. It's highly industrialized.
But they finally got one. They finally got one. So it's a great, hopefully that leads to many more. So all right. And just remember when you're voting between the two,
there can be only one.
All right. What do you got, Tom?
All right. So this was actually a tough week for me looking for an article because I thought I had a home run that I found, and it was about native plants that were coming up in coyote scat and how they use coyotes to figure out how to germinate plants better.
Yeah.
And I saw it posted someplace. I'm like, oh, this is a really good one.
Yeah.
And then I saw it posted someplace else, and someplace it started to go crazy. And then I was like, you know what? I'm still going to use it. But then I saw it was from 2014, and that's not really a current event.
Okay.
So then I started to look a little bit more, and there was actually an article posted a couple days, actually yesterday, about scientists discovered a new bee species on a Bayer partner farm in Brazil.
Really?
But I know our audience, and I know they're not going to want to hear about Bayer, so I didn't want to go with that one either. Right. But that's an interesting article. It's on Seed Today.
Yeah.
About and I'll read the title one more time. Scientists discover a new bee species on Bayer partner farm in Brazil. Right. So I hope it's not like, I didn't read the whole article, but I hope it's not like a mutant bee. I hope it's something naturally
like
occurring.
A killer.
Yeah.
It's a killer bee.
Yeah. But what I ended up going with was from the Boston Globe, and it was called "Preserving Not Just the Most Beautiful Landscapes, but the Most Resilient."
Oh,
and it was an idea piece written by Mark Anderson, who works for the Nature Conservancy on the East Coast.
Okay.
And the whole concept was they actually came up with a scoring program. The Nature Conservancy came up with a scoring program.
All right.
That while the beautiful areas, we need to preserve them too, because they stand out to people. They inspire people. They make them care more about the environment. But they came up with a scoring program to figure out what places had the most value.
All right.
And they were looking at, where'd my note go? They were looking at the resiliency of the area, how it would be able to respond to climate change being an overall factor. The diversity of that area, how many different species of plants were there, how many different species of animals it could harbor.
Okay.
And then the connectivity as well. They wanted to look at how connected it was to other areas. It wasn't just a little tiny 100-yard patch of woods in the middle of a development, golf courses and all that. It was something that was connected to other areas, so it could have more of an impact.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool that they came up with this whole system to gauge it, and it's this targeted restoration process or conservation process really works. And they found that with wetlands. When you target like wetlands, they found support, or wetland habitats supported more bird comebacks than like any other any other area. And that's one of the areas that's really been targeted for restoration across the country, but especially here on the East Coast.
Okay.
And that's primarily our business, is wetland restoration. And I didn't realize it was as heavily targeted as it was.
Interesting.
So those targets work. And we even saw with Million Trees NYC, where they pledged to plant 1 million trees in New York City over a couple year span, that they had a similar scoring system where they found where the most need was for trees and areas where they'd make the most impact. And I don't remember the video where it was, but there's a video that kind of went over that scoring system, and it might have actually been in a documentary called Hometown Habitat.
All right.
I think that was the name.
I think I've seen that.
We had the
was that Kim?
No, not Kim Ironman. It's oh man, I'm blanking on her name.
But
I'm gonna look that one up too.
We watched that at one of
our dinners.
Yes.
We had
we did.
Had that a screening of it, and but they talked about in New York City, and you could see the map, and like the redder areas were the areas that needed more trees, basically, because there was a lack of trees. And the other interesting part with New York City was they found where the lack of trees and the lack of open space also coincided with where there was more poverty.
Really? So, wow.
And that was one of their things, is obviously planting more trees isn't going to help with the poverty problem.
Yeah.
But it might help people mentally and socially by giving them a place to be in nature. So, and Hometown Habitat was by Catherine Zimmerman, and Doug Talmy was on there, and they had a bunch of different places that were featured. It was actually a really, really interesting documentary that she made.
One thing, when you mentioned the lack of trees and flora in poverty-stricken areas, one thing that always stood out to me was at Princeton Nurseries, one of my clients was Anheuser-Busch, and I was visiting their headquarters in St. Louis to consult on something. And I thought it was interesting, the amount of outreach that Anheuser-Busch did in the local community, because leading into it, there were some areas that weren't as nice, but they were some of the most beautifully landscaped areas, and that they really took care of the community. And what a difference perception that made. I could see, like, mentally, just like it was, even though you could tell it was a little more, lower class income, probably, it really beautified the area. It made a huge difference. And it was nice and
it's something that we'll probably get into at some point on the podcast, but how nature is really such a good thing for people medically. And there's research that's been done where just having a window in your hospital room, you heal X amount or percentage faster. And having even a fake plastic plant in your hospital room, you heal faster. But having a real plant was even more fast. So it's
I would love to dive into that. There's a lot of areas I would love to cover that we haven't gotten to yet, but that's one I would definitely, native plants as healing.
Yes, yeah.
We just need to find out.
And that was just plants in general. They found that having plants just helped people. They've even found in schools, having a window or having plants in the classroom, kids learn better. There's all these things. Just, we need to be connected to nature. It's just something, a part of being human, that you want to be connected to nature. And we've done our best to try and put a split and put a wedge in there and separate ourselves from nature. But at the end of the day, we want to be connected. So
totally. That's a good article, Tom. That's
even though I riffed on it a lot. But no, the article was very interesting. And that's only a week or two old.
Okay.
So
all right,
it's
awesome.
Something for you guys to look up. And if you're from the Northeast, if you're from Massachusetts or that area, you'll even recognize some of the locations they added on there in Vermont and Massachusetts.
Awesome. Speaking of articles, I wanted to point out one of our listeners in the Facebook group, Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, posted an article about the history of an area near the Pine Barrens from 1912, I believe it was. It's a very lengthy article, and I haven't finished it yet. But man, I am enjoying. Did you get to?
I read a good portion of it as well, and then I was like, "Oh, I've been reading this for like 15 minutes. So how much longer is it?" And I was only maybe a quarter of the way through.
But did you read the where they explained why cranberry bogs are flooded in the winter?
I might have glossed over it.
Really interesting, and something I didn't know, considering we're in cranberry country in New Jersey, that they found that, obviously when they started picking cranberries, they were picking them from natural areas. And then they realized, hey, maybe we should, collect plants, grow plants, put them in one area to make collection easier. And they were saying that New Jersey plants, because of the iron, produce a better tasting.
And they were a more prized berry for a higher dollar value.
So what they found was, as soon as they started grouping large areas of cranberries together, that I hope I'm pronouncing it correct, pyralid moth larvae, which feed on huckleberry. Once once there were large groups of cranberries, it was easier feeding. So they were saying they could destroy, I think they were saying the eggs of 300 moths could destroy an acre a day, I think. So they started flooding the bogs over the winter until May to prevent the larvae from attacking them. And it deterred them where they went back to the huckleberry. And that's why they flood cranberry bogs to this day. I had no idea that's what that practice
was very interesting.
Yeah, that and the fact that they said that the entomologists, when they did the first flooding, gathered all the insects and took them to the Philadelphia Academy of Science to catalog and learn. And they were saying that 1/3 of the host of insects in the northeastern USA are found in that area of Lahaway. Lahaway, which is that kind of like the corner of 3 counties in New Jersey, Burlington, Mercer, and Monmouth, which is where Princeton Nurseries was. So it was pretty interesting to me that I was very familiar with some of that.
Yeah, and just growing up in this area where I live like 15 minutes away from there, there's a lot of places that I've driven through a whole bunch, and like Prospertown and Imleystown,
Hornerstown. It was kind of
all
cool
that kind of stuff
to learn the history of Hornerstown. So in that article, so it was really cool. So you have 2 articles, my Eagle article and Tom's article about how would you
targeted restoration.
So you can vote. We'll get it up on the
in the Facebook group.
You like normal. You know, the turnout, the last one, we didn't get as many votes as
posted a
normal.
couple days late. I think that was probably. I usually do it, and I was busy. And so I told Fran to do it.
I posted it, and then I forgot the votes. So we'll do that, and just remember.
And of course, the choice is yours.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.